Andy, when should I rasterize my text? Well, I can give you about 125 reasons. I'll explain that in a second. Get into the rasterize.psd document that is inside of your work folder, and you can see we have the word raster, and it is a text layer. And there are certain things we can, and there are certain things we can't do to a vector text layer. Remember, since version 7, and that's got to have been about 10 years ago, we have the ability, if we leave it as a text layer, to output it as vector. And that's beautiful, because then the text will always be pretty. But there are times when I don't want it to be raster. You say, well, when? Well, let me show you that. If you go up to the word filter on the pull-down menu and you say, well, I think I want to add a little bit of a soft blur to this thing. Well, you come down to blur, maybe choose Gaussian, which is about the most common one. And it tells you you can't, because it's not rasterized. Now, since there are over 125 type effects and filters in this program, I'd say there are about 125 reasons why you might want to rasterize the file. Before we get there, though, let me show you one little trick. If you want to change the color of a font and it still is a text layer, you don't have to select the type tool, you don't have to select a color and then change it. You could do this. Let me come over here and click on the foreground button and choose a different color, like a red. All you have to do now is use the shortcut for filling, and that is Alt backspace, and it will be more than glad to do it. Text layers can only contain text, everything else is kind of locked out, so that does work. Now, what are we doing here? Well, if we want to blur it, if we want to do some things to it, we can, but there is an exception to that too I should bring up. Let me move this up just a little bit higher. If I want to do, say, a gradient by using the gradient tool, I can't unless I rasterize it. However, don't forget that under these buttons here, like the effects buttons, and over here, you do have things even like a gradient overlay. Now, that will allow you to put a gradient onto text and still keep it as text. I mean, we could even do a drop shadow if you want to. We went over styles a little bit earlier, and really they're the same on text as they are anything else. But the problem is, if you need something that you don't have with those features, and you don't mind if you rasterize it, because rasterization means something. It means converting it into pixels. Let's do this. Let me right-click on Effects, and let's tell the computer to clear the layer styles out. And now we're kind of back to where we were before. We don't have to wait to apply something to rasterize a layer. We can go up to the word layer on the pull-down menu and go down to Layer, Rasterize, and select Type. Remember what you've done. You've converted it into paint. If you realize you mistyped the word, that boat has sailed, unless you want to undo and go back. So you want to make sure you like the font, you like the type, you spelled it right, now you're ready to go. And yes, you can now go up to the word filter and have fun. Have at it. You want to Gaussian blur it? Go ahead and Gaussian blur it. It's not going to stop you. Do anything that you want to do. So there is a time to rasterize. And there is a time when you don't want to rasterize because you want to maintain that beautiful, pristine nature of the text. I would suggest in most cases, when you're dealing with things like paragraph text, you'd probably never want to rasterize paragraph text because you need people to read it. But if you're looking for special effects and things like that, and they are not covered in this area right here or here, well, sure, go ahead and rasterize it. On to the next.